Two uniformed men stepped out of a white SUV with a roof light bar, boots grinding gravel as if the driveway belonged to them. The bold lettering on their navy shirts read HOA Patrol, and their posture carried the easy confidence of people who expected obedience. They bypassed the ranch gate and rolled straight up the private drive, scanning the porch, the barn, even the cattle as if the land itself were a violation waiting to be documented. From the shadow of the doorway, Ethan Cole watched without moving, letting his instincts do what years of ranch life taught him to do, read intentions before words. He noticed the folder tucked under one man's arm, the way both men kept glancing toward the house, and the way the SUV idled like it planned to stay. That was the moment the entire property seemed to shrink into one narrow corridor: strangers, driveway, porch, decision. Ethan's ranch had existed longer than the nearest paved road. It was working land with real rhythm, fences that needed mending, hay that had to be stacked before weather turned, cattle that didn't care about anyone's vision. The place didn't run on trends. It ran on early mornings, repairs, and quiet pride passed down through generations. For most of Ethan's life, the nearest neighbors were distance and open sky. Then a developer bought the bordering acreage and pressed a subdivision right up against the ranch fence line, a grid of identical rooftops where there used to be nothing but wind. With those houses came an HOA, and with the HOA came a confidence that didn't match reality. At first, it was just an occasional figure peering through the fence like the ranch was an exhibit. Soon it became a pattern: Becky Hart, the HOA president, arriving in a dark pink jacket with curly golden blonde hair and a clipboard held like a badge, wearing the expression of someone who believed paperwork could rewrite ownership. The first real boundary crossing didn't arrive with a lawsuit or a sheriff's deputy. It arrived as a notice, delivered with the smug certainty of authority that didn't exist. After one fence repair day, Becky's clipboard began turning into letters, warnings that treated the ranch as if it were an unruly yard in her subdivision. The ranch was described as unsightly. The livestock were labeled a nuisance. The barn, the hay stacks, the tractor, the fencing, everything Ethan relied on to earn a living, was reframed as a problem to be corrected. Each letter carried fines that escalated quickly, not because Ethan had done anything new, but because the HOA needed pressure to become its own proof. Ethan didn't pay. He didn't respond. He didn't perform outrage for people who fed on reaction. He did something far more dangerous to them: he saved everything. Every envelope, every notice, every violation, filed into a growing archive that made the harassment measurable and undeniable. Harassment rarely stays on paper when the target refuses to flinch. Over time, the HOA's obsession grew legs. Board members showed up along the subdivision side of the fence line taking photos, pointing at structures and livestock as if building a case. Someone used a measuring wheel. Pacing distances like inches could become jurisdiction. Complaints were sent to the county again and again until a county employee finally visited, looked around, found nothing actionable, and never returned. That absence of validation only made the HOA more reckless. Becky's appearances became theatrical: dark pink jacket, clipboard, rigid posture. Then she stopped coming alone. People arrived with her, a small entourage that lingered like witnesses at a trial no court had scheduled. The total of the fines ballooned into absurdity, large enough to frighten someone unfamiliar with how powerless it all was. But the tone shifted in the third year. The HOA stopped acting like it wanted compliance and started acting like it wanted ownership to feel negotiable. Then, on an ordinary weekday, a marked SUV with official-looking decals turned onto Ethan's private driveway and did not slow down. The SUV carried an HOA patrol decal designed to look legitimate at a glance, the kind of branding meant to make people second-guess their own rights. Two men stepped out with crisp uniforms and practiced movements, scanning the property like they had rehearsed this approach in safer neighborhoods. Ethan felt the change instantly. This was no longer Becky's clipboard theater at the fence. This was a physical presence at the house. A folder was held like a warrant. Body language suggested compliance was expected, not requested. Ethan's wife was moved deeper inside and the door was locked, not out of panic, but out of principle. Evidence mattered now more than pride. Ethan stepped back outside with his phone clearly raised, recording from the porch where the boundaries were unmistakable. He didn't charge forward. He didn't posture. He held still and let the camera do the escalating, because nothing scares pretend authority more than documentation that can't be argued with later. The power dynamic didn't shift with shouting. It shifted with certainty. The HOA patrolmen saw the phone, saw the fixed porch position, and realized this wouldn't become a messy scene they could control with intimidation. Their confidence thinned fast. One stepped back without meaning to, the other fumbled the folder, and papers slipped free, scattering across gravel in a sudden, chaotic fan. Ethan remained steady, filming the SUV decals, the uniforms, the faces, the route that bypassed the gate. The moment became unmistakable, not enforcement, but performance, not authority, but costume. Within minutes, their approach collapsed into retreat. They gathered their documents with rushed hands, avoiding the porch and glancing toward the road as if expecting consequences to arrive any second. Ethan didn't follow them. He didn't need to. He captured the departure, the vehicle, the markings, and the trespass, then made the calls that transformed years of annoyance into something courts and real authorities understood, his lawyer first, then the local sheriff, because the HOA had finally crossed into the kind of stupidity that leaves a trail. Ethan's lawyer had told him for years that the day the HOA did something truly reckless, Ethan's careful archive would become leverage. That day had arrived. The notices proved a pattern. The photos proved fixation. The video proved escalation from paper threats to physical intrusion. The sheriff took a report and made it clear that private property lines were not suggestions, especially in rural Texas where misunderstandings turned dangerous and fast. Meanwhile, the security company behind the HOA patrol branding folded the moment legal pressure appeared. They didn't want to be attached to a trespass that looked like impersonation and intimidation. They handed over their contract and work order, and that paperwork did what anger never could: it documented intent and origin. The job description framed Ethan as an unlawful occupant and treated the visit as an escort problem rather than a conversation, tying the request directly back to Becky Hart. Inside the subdivision, panic spread through the HOA board. Liability has a way of sobering people who love rules. Meetings that used to fixate on lawns and paint colors turned into damage control. Becky's clipboard power evaporated under the weight of written proof, and the board cut her loose to shield itself. Every fine aimed at the ranch was rescinded. All contact stopped. A formal statement acknowledged the ranch as private agricultural land outside HOA jurisdiction. Ethan went back to mending fences and feeding cattle, but the quiet felt different: earned, defended, documented. Years later, the subdivision still sat beyond the fence, neat and identical, but it no longer reached through the wire. If an HOA tried to claim power over land you legally owned, would you ignore it, fight it, or document everything until it collapsed under its own paper trail?